So in this video we're going to consider an objection to Lewis's view, which is all about word meaning. And basically the objection is going to be like this. When you give us the kind of conventional account of language that Lewis did, you've told us how sentences of English get their meaning. Because Lewis's account is all about saying sentences that are true, or coming to believe what sentences say, and things like that. So if we have a conventional account of meaning, we know what the meanings of the sentences people use are. But the question is whether we also get an account of what the particular words mean. So if we know that the sentence, "the cat is on the mat," we use that in a way which is associated with those kinds of situations. Do we automatically have an account where the individual words mean the right things as well? You might have thought that the answer to this is yes, that, well, as long as we get the meanings of the sentences right, then we're home free. Then we also must have the words right as well. As a matter of fact, though, this turns out not to be right. And the reason for that is because even if we get the right meanings for a particular sentence, there are multiple different ways to assign meanings to the individual words, which will give you the same meaning for the sentence. And because Lewis's account only gives us the meanings for sentences, but there are multiple ways to come up with the right meaning of a sentence while giving the individual words different meanings, what that's going to mean is that his account does not pin down the meanings of the words and sentences as well. That's not at all obvious, but Lewis goes through it very quickly. What I'm mainly going to do in this video is walk through that all a little bit more slowly. So the main thing we're going to try and do is show that, well, even given a particular meaning for a sentence, there are lots of different ways to assign meanings to the individual words in that sentence, which would give you the same result. That sounds, off the face of it, that sounds very hard to believe. Hopefully it will be a lot less hard to believe by the end of this video. So let's focus on a particular sentence. And I'll just pick the sentence, DB is Irish. A true sentence, as it happens. And what we're going to show is that, well, there actually are ways to pair the name and this thing that we'll call the predicate with different meanings that still give you the result that the whole sentence means the same thing as it actually does. What basically is going to happen is that the idea is so what we'll first do is we'll make the name mean something other than it does. We'll make it mean some other person, and what we'll do is we'll make it mean Mark Twain. So we'll consider a different language where the expression David Boylan means Mark Twain. And what we're going to see is that if we make a sort of corresponding adjustment, so if we also change the meaning of is Irish in a subtle way, the entire sentence will mean the same thing as it did in English, even though the name picks out something different. Okay, how could that possibly work? Well, here basically is how it's going to work. What we're going to do is we're going to invent a new kind of predicate or property, and we're going to call it is Smirish. This is going to be kind of complicated. But what we're going to do is we're going to say, well, what are the conditions under which you count as being Schmirish? And that there are going to be a number of clauses to it, where it's going to be kind of a disjunction. In one case, it takes one thing, in another case, it takes a different thing. So if you're neither me, David Boylan, or Mark Twain, you're Smirish just in case you're Irish. So with the exception of me and Mark Twain, this new property applies to you just in case the old property of Irish applied to you. So for example, James Joyce, well, he's neither David Boylan nor Mark Twain. He is Irish, so he counts as being Schmirish. On the other hand, Brad Pitt, well, again, he's neither David Boylan nor Mark Twain. He's not Irish, so he's not Schmirish. So that's how Schmirish works if you're neither David Boylan nor you're Mark Twain. And then we're going to have two more conditions. One saying, well, when does it apply if you are David Boylan? When does it apply if you are Mark Twain? So we'll say, if you're David Boylan, then you're Smirish just in case Mark Twain is Irish. So for me to be Smirish is for Mark Twain to have the property of being Irish. And then for Mark Twain, we do the same kind of thing. So if you're Mark Twain, you're Smirish, just in case David Boylan is Irish. Okay, so that's a little bit complicated because it's a kind of three-part definition. But you can think of it as what we've done is we've taken the original Irish, we've taken the original meaning of Irish and we've just moved it around a little bit. So for most people, they count as being Schmirish just in case they originally counted as being Irish. And then there are these two little exceptions of me and Mark Twain. Okay, so let's go back to our original sentence. So here is what we can start off with. That sentence is true in English, just in case, well, David Boylan is Irish. And that's part of why it means what it does, because that's the kind of situation in which it's true. And what we're going to do now very quickly is we're going to show, well, actually now once we've got this idea of being Schmirish, we could give the words different meanings, where we still end up with the same conclusion, that the sentence is true if and only if David Boylan is Irish. So what we're going to do is we're going to say the name David Boylan means Mark Twain. And we're going to say the predicate is Irish is the same thing as is Schmirish, this new property we've just introduced. So those are the new meanings we're going to give. Now obviously these are not what these things actually mean in English. But what we're going to see is that if we assign them these new meanings, then the sentence is going to be true in exactly the same situations as it was in English. That is, it's going to have exactly the whole sentence is going to have exactly the same meaning as it actually does in English, even though the words in it themselves now have different meanings. So how is this going to work? Well, if we say that David Boylan is Irish has this meaning, or David Boylan means Mark Twain, and is Irish means is Smirish, then the sentence is going to be true just in case Mark Twain is Smirish. Okay, but we have a definition of being Smirish. Now let's go see what it says. So we want to figure out in this situation whether Mark Twain counts as being Smirish. Well, either 1 and 2 don't matter, because Mark Twain is Mark Twain, so this doesn't apply, and Mark Twain isn't David Boylan, so this doesn't apply. So what we're looking at is the third condition. And the third condition says, well, if you're Mark Twain, then you have the property of being Smirish, just in case David Boylan is Irish. And so by definition, just how we've defined being Smirish, Mark Twain is Smirish, just in case David Boylan is Irish. So what this shows is that even though we've assigned the words in the sentence these weird meanings, the sentence overall still means the same thing. Because even though the name refers to something else, we made a sort of corresponding adjustment to the meaning of the predicate, which ends up with the result that the sentence is true in exactly the same situations as it is in English, despite the fact that it has these really weird meanings. Now that's just one example, but when you really digest the example, you'll be able to see that we could kind of basically do the same thing to anything in our language. We could change what all the names mean, but as long as we make corresponding changes to the predicates, then all the sentences will mean the same things as they do in English, despite the fact that the words in them mean different things. So differences we introduce in the names can be sort of ironed out by making compensatory differences in the predicates. So let's go back to why all of this matters. The reason why it matters is because on Lewis's conventional account of meaning, all he does is he gives us what particular sentences mean. He tells us what meanings are associated with particular sentences. But what we've just seen is that just being told what the meaning of a sentence is actually doesn't pin down what the words in that sentence mean. Because there are multiple different ways of giving meanings to the words, which would give you the same meaning for the whole sentence. And in fact, we can do that for the entire language, keeping all of the meanings of the sentences the same. Can't sort of show that rigorously, but hopefully you'll kind of be able to see from the example how that might go. So this worry for the conventional account is that, well, it doesn't really seem to fully pin down our language. It only tells us what the sentences mean, and it doesn't indeed tell us what the words mean. Now, Lewis has kind of an odd reaction at this point, or a reaction you might find odd. And his reaction is, well, that's just sort of tough. He says, well, if we can't really pin down what the words mean in this respect, then maybe there just really is no fact of the matter. Maybe there's no fact of the matter whether David Boylan refers to me or it refers to Mark Twain. Maybe there's no fact of the matter whether is Irish talks about being Irish or whether it talks about being Smirish. Lewis is a bit kind of blasé about this in this paper, but it actually does seem like kind of a serious problem, because while he might not feel troubled by saying, well, there's no fact of the matter what David Boylan refers to, I don't think that's what we really want to go along with him with that. I mean, it seems pretty clear that the name does refer to me and not to Mark Twain. And a theory that doesn't allow you to say that is sort of in trouble. The other thing, though, as well is, you know, even if you weren't as worried about, even if you didn't think it was quite as clear as it seems to me that there's a fact of the matter, what we're going to do is we're going to see in the next video that this same problem about not being able to pin down word meaning leads to a second problem for Lewis, where he can't react in the same way by just saying there's no fact of the matter about word meaning. Because this next problem we're going to see is a problem about sentence meaning and not word meaning, although it's going to be connected to this one about word meaning.